Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Beyond Trade Podcast. I'm your host, Liam Dalton. If you're new around here, want to consider subscribing or following the show if you're listening to the podcast version. And if you like the show, give us a like, review, comment, share, rating. All that stuff would be much appreciated to help us grow, help get the word out there. We have a fantastic guest today. This gentleman, I've listened to a lot of his work, read a little bit of his stuff as well. Fantastic mind, great mind. Really, really happy to have him on the terrain team and just in sort of the true health freedom community. I've learned a lot from him, and so I certainly owe a lot of what I know to him, and a lot of motivation as well, right? So obviously the Alpha Vedic podcast is one of the best out there in my opinion, and so really grateful to have this conversation with you today, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time.
Oh, my pleasure, brother. Anytime I can come on and chat terrain and freedom and all that jazz, it's what I get off on. So glad to be here. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. Feel the same way. All right, I start all my podcasts off asking a little introductory question. I get the guest to define health. So, what does health mean to you? What does it look like? How does it manifest? You can take it in any direction that you like. It's kind of a big question. I'm eager to hear what you have to say about it.
Health to me is freedom. It really is. It's the uh, internal light of knowing oneself, knowing thyself is where health comes from and is for me paramount to for true self-governance. Without understanding of what health is, we can't really understand who we are, why we're here, and all those big questions, right? It is paramount for the deeper gnosis that comes with knowing how to heal oneself, which is really where where Alpha Vedic comes out of. Our podcast we've been doing since 2018. We started dabbling in 2017, but it started going out there actually more like 2019. But the whole it's kind of opened up into all these other conversations around history and law and commerce and the nature of reality. And it all had stemmed from health for a reason. Because if we can't know who we are and how this miraculous body functions, then we really can't go into those other places yet. So for us, it is foundational, and it truly is the key to knowledge, wisdom, and all that is wonderful in this life that we have been given.
Beautiful. Amazing answer. Amazing answer. Pretty unique one. We've been doing this 70 episodes now, and I just love how every week we have a new definition, a new way of looking at it, and it's just so special. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. You mentioned freedom, getting to know yourself. Those are like some of the biggest topics. I know, like my own personal journey on becoming a sovereign individual. Not that I was not a sovereign individual before, but kind of realizing my sovereignty and the freedom that I have within me, because we're not taught this from birth, obviously. And it's something that I kind of had to rediscover in a way and learn. Maybe I'd love to hear a little bit about your kind of journey on rediscovering your own sovereignty and freedom, and maybe even just a few helpful tips on how do you start to be free. How do you even be free, right? And I know it's very simple, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I know this is cliche, but it really is the inside out approach. And I love
Mm,
that this idea has become cliche in 2025. It means that really the great awakening is upon us. And for me personally, I will say I've had the benefit of having mentors in my life that have really helped guide me in this path. One being Dr. Berlando, who I do the AlphaCast podcast with, and who I'm partners with in Alpha Vedic, and then my father, my mother. I'm so blessed to have loving parents that I get to see almost every day, who live up the street from me and who
wow.
have helped guide me in and really supported me in my own exploration of finding my way, finding my path. And really, I'm a huge believer in the hero's arc, the hero's story that we all have to live, and that we've all signed up for a specific mission while we're here. And in doing that, it's paramount that we express that through our own sovereignty. This isn't somebody else's story. This isn't an external officialdom's way of being for us, right? This is our specific path that we've all chosen here to embody and to explore. And I think one of the greatest tragedies of the modern era is we've forgotten this. Most people have lost track of this and have no idea what their true purpose is. So I believe without purpose, we can't have sovereignty. So that's so critical, right? Is that we find what that mission is, right? What that hero's journey is for each and every one of us, and it can be something as simple as finding your way in a specific vocation is like a carpenter or a tradesman, or it could be something as great as being a community leader or somebody who's fighting crime, or I mean, the beautiful thing about this experience in life is the scope and fractality of the human experience, and how we can find beauty in the simplest interaction with somebody, a stranger on the street, to championing peace, love, and freedom in an event like Music and Sky. And so everybody has the ability to find this in their life. And I think it just comes first and foremost with the awareness that this is the reality that we all have to engage with and experience.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. I love how this intertwines with meaning and purpose, and I mean that's central to health and well-being as well, right? Like even reflecting back on my journey, it all came hand in hand. I went through the traditional schooling system. I did biochemistry and molecular, and halfway through my degree, I kind of had to take a good look at myself and realize, like ask myself, is this the meaning that you want, right? Because I almost had this pseudo type of meaning. So I really think this speaks to a lot, like the power of reflection too, because I thought I was on this meaningful path. I was pursuing dentistry. I wanted to go be a dental surgeon and make all this money and have a multinational corporation. And, like that was,
Yeah.
I thought that this was going to be the most meaningful path for me. I wanted to be a billionaire. Right. And I was like in grade 11 when I thought this up. Right. So I was kind of young and you're still probably a little stupid. And, like it's just funny, but I had myself convinced. And then COVID was the biggest blessing because it allowed me to take some time to reflect and say, is this my path? Am I going to be 80, 90 years old looking back on my life thinking, wow, I'm really happy that I did that. And that's what shifted, my journey towards the things that have brought me the most meaning, like looking at my health, like looking at my freedom and sovereignty, what is going to be purposeful, doing this podcast, connecting with some amazing people. It's amazing how that really spurred it on for me. Even just going outside and sitting in nature and just sitting there, not bringing my phone and not even journaling, just sitting there and listening to the birds chirp. And for some reason, this just allowed me to go in, like the healing powers of nature, man. That's what I keep coming back to time and time again. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you touched on so many important things right there. I mean, first and foremost, I would say we live in a communal realm. Um,
Yeah.
and we are communal creatures, and we require each other to exist here. If we were all by ourselves, we wouldn't last long. There's this idea of like the lone wolf will not outlast the apocalypse, right? I'm a huge, huge fan of community, and the only way that that really works is when we are in service to each other. And I believe that is really one of the key elements towards success, right? And wealth. And, of course, in modern times, wealth is measured in the conventional way through, like you were saying, greenbacks and dollar bills and all that, and our bank account. And I find it quite inspirational that your generation especially because I'm a Gen Xer that was like really sold on that, right? Like you think of Gen X, you think of like the movie Wall Street, and the guys with the slick back hair, American Psychos, that are comparing their business cards. And I was also definitely massively affected by that. It's funny you were saying a billionaire. That just goes to show how much we've inflated our currency. Because when I was that age, I was saying my goal was to be a millionaire by the time I was 30, and I would then be truly wealthy. And what happened was actually I found the love of my life and was married at 30, and realized that that was really what I was aiming for as a youth. It was that. And so wealth, like, how do we judge and value wealth, is so important for health. I mean, they're only a letter off, right? That first letter. And really, health is wealth. And when we can understand that idea of service and how those immeasurable but yet tangible and qualitative aspects of the ledger, right? Of when we go out and our service to our fellow brothers and sisters every day, nature will in tune deliver and all the wealth you will ever require to subsist here. And I think that is one of the truly miraculous and the big secret, if you will, of how this place works. It's a give and give more reality. And nature shows us that every day if we just go observe her. So yeah, it's for me, nature is a reflection of that true deep desire within us to be of service and to embody that Christ energy, if you will, right? That expression of love. And nature is loving. Nature is here to support us in our journey towards experience true consciousness and true evolution of that consciousness towards a higher way of being. So yeah, it's I do see that one of the pitfalls of modern times is this pure worship, this like bacchanalian hedonistic worship of nature, and so there's like this weird um, inversion that we see. Like we see it like on the left and in this like environmentalist movements and stuff, where there's this like pure worship of nature where we demean the human consciousness and the importance of that. And so for me it's balance, right? It's like balancing that innate humanness of the imagination to create and why we're here, with the support of nature is really here to support us. And when we embrace that and we actually exude our true power, then we're here on the flip side in that balance spectrum supporting her. And we are at a massive imbalance in terms of, like, if we look at just conventional modern times and society and the culture that we're in, there's a massive imbalance there. So finding that balance is also health, right? Like that's a huge part in health, is the balance between the spiritual and the physical, the balance and understanding and respecting the physical, but also understanding that we are much more than that. And so that's something that I'm always trying to inspire in others through my actions and through my message, is going out and truly embracing Mother Nature, but also realizing that we have a duty to be of service to her as well. It's a feedback loop, if you will.
Yeah, very, very well put. Yeah. I mean, always just so amazingly positive. That's why I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today. I think you mentioned a lot of great things, and I just wanted to note, on giving, like being able to give your time and your energy to something, for me was one of also the most helpful ways to find what is meaningful for me. I wanted to study bioterrain and, alternative health modalities, different stuff like that. I was so enveloped by that. I loved the study of it and I could do it all day for free. So I thought, what I could take this to the next level. That's why I did the podcast, right? So I can share, I can learn at the same time because, I'm always learning for the for the rest of my life. That's the other journey that was kind of sparked there with all this. But um, just finding out what I could do for free and not want anything in return. And I mean, the returns are always tenfold, especially I feel like when you have a giving mindset, because the return is connecting with these amazing people and, all the amazing feedback and friends that I've made along the way. I have conversations with people all the time about the topics that I love. It just comes back at like exponentially. So, I think that that's a really kind of more tangible thing, on your path for looking for meaning and purpose. It's like find what you can do for free and just do it. And don't expect anything in return. Just do it because you love it and give it your all. Become the best version of yourself, stuff like that.
Well, and you
Um,
hit on something important because you love it. Because you
yeah.
love it. So Dr. Bear and I didn't start AlphaCast because we were it was like a marketing campaign for Alpha Vedic. We literally did it because we were passionate about talking about this stuff and it was fun. Like we did it because we didn't even know it was like an experiment. We just, we're like, "Hey, should we just like start this thing and just for fun and see if people care about what we're talking about?" Because we had had like a decade of these conversations over the phone and in person. We're like, wow, I think people might like to hear this. It's kind of trippy stuff, and Barry, you bring a lot of value to the world, and I just want to give this to the world, and I like doing it. So let's try it out. And I think those who even like Joe Rogan, people may, and in certain circles in the truther world, put him down and stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of issues with when you get that big and maybe not going
Mhm.
all the way, but the reason why he found so much success, because I was an early adopter of the Rogan podcast. I was working in Hollywood. I had my editor buddy and partner was he told me, hey, this guy Joe Rogan started this podcast, and podcasting was very fresh. I was listening to Adam Carolla and a couple others at that time. And it wasn't really until Rogan came out that I got really into podcasting. And what was he doing? He was sitting on a couch with his buddy, BSing and having fun, right? And it was, and the point is it's super organic, right? And when you do things with the real intention of being authentic, right, and doing it for the passion and the love, just to do it, and just to do it because you love it, that's when you find success, right? And so doesn't have to be hard. Like service doesn't have to be this thing where where you have to give up all the fun and make it difficult. It can be it is rewarding, but it should be fun.
Yeah, yeah, well put. Well put. Um, in your last answer there, you were mentioning tying in the physical and the spiritual, and that just kind of spurred on some thoughts for me. I think there was probably a time where, especially initially on my journey, where I went from being very materialistic to almost going over the edge and too spiritual, and all this physical stuff doesn't matter. And it was just as unhelpful as materialism, through this finding this balance, it was necessary to find, you know, the spiritual side of myself in this realm, but like in the grand scheme of things, but um, tying it back into this balance was really important. And through the study of alchemy really was one of the most helpful things for me. Um, kind of understanding this, this duality. I know it's probably more of like a trinity than anything, but understanding that there's more than just black and white, and there needs to be this balance. And balance is just something that I always come back to. You want to talk about health, you want to talk about financial wealth through dollar. You say dollar bills, we say loonies up here in Canada. um like if you want to measure it that way, there needs to be balance there as well. There needs to be balance in every aspect of your life, right? So I think that's a really, really important thing. Maybe I could hear a little bit more about your thoughts on balance, and even tying it into the alchemical tradition a little bit, because I know you guys talk a lot about that too
Yeah.
on the podcast.
Well, I mean, you mentioned something about the Trinity, and I think we do live in a triune reality, and that is inherent in balance. So, if you think about just a physical means of balancing, like a seesaw has a duality, but in the middle is the fulcrum where the balance is. So, you have one side, you could say you have spirit, then the other side, you have the body, right? And in the middle, you have the soul, and the soul. So that's the sort of the three aspects of alchemy, and the soul is in our true essence. It's our immortality, and it is how we balance. So it we have the innate ability to always balance because it's built within us. And so I think I'm a huge fan of that element, of that aspect of alchemy. And alchemy, in the same way, can is it's twofold in terms of it's both materialistic in the sense that you do spagyrics, and yes, you can turn lead to gold, all of that, and is also relating to the spiritual alchemy, like the alchemical wedding within us, and everything to do with transcending that duality in the end. So, yeah, it's alchemy is truly the science of all sciences. It is the spirit science that is based and grounded in the qualitative side of measurement, um, where chemistry sort of got mired in, which comes chemistry comes out of alchem, chemistry, the chem, uh, uh, which really is mired in just the pure one-sided, right? And as we say on alpha cast, and we relate this to like Walter Russell and stuff, there's a focus on just the death cycle of the wave, and in the wave we have a continuation of death, life, death, life, death, life, and in the middle is the fulcrum, which is Walter Russell would explain is the still white light of mind, or the God mind of God. So yeah, it's important for us to always go back to balance, but also to have grace in understanding that in that teeter tottering of the balance, sometimes we'll go heavy on one side, and that's okay. That's part of the experience here in this realm of duality. And it's, I think, important for us not to get so hard on ourselves in the spiritual path, but it's important to be on that path. And I think that what's really been exciting for me in the last 4 years since the COVIDian erectus idiot, stuff that was going on, was that a lot of people were initiated. It was a great initiation onto the spiritual path. And we saw that with, I do an event called Music and Sky that we launched in 2020 during the height of the COVID scare in California. And it was really all about this. It was all about engaging in the body through breath work and movement, and really focusing on our grounding into nature. And then, so that is the music side, right? So music side is on that duality, is that like is the expression of our body and of our true innate humanness. And then the sky part is the spirit. It's the heady topics. It's the ideas that get into consciousness and where we can go outside of our body. And then the and in the middle, I guess, would be the sort of grounding it in our soul as a community. And so without community, without the soul of community, this all can just kind of deteriorate or go super one way and like new agey and way too spiritual, or get way too marred in the physicality of the fear of things, right? And the fear of being sick or infection and all those things. So yeah, it's really important for us to understand these topics and understand these ideas, because with that we can have knowledge, and then with that, when we use that knowledge, we impart upon the world wisdom, and wisdom is the action of knowledge, actually using the knowledge in our lives. And when we do that, we inspire others to learn and to wake up and to follow in that path. And that for me is so important, is that we go out and we do the things. So you started a podcast because you wanted to take these ideas and put them out to the world. So you're doing something. So we can't forget the need to do things. And that's something that Bear and I and the Alpha Vedic crew are always doing. Like, we have our own company, we make our own products to self fund ourselves. Sure, we do a podcast, but I do events, I travel, I try to live in the world, not be of it, but definitely be in it and experience as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of people nowadays are kind of stuck in the consumption side of things. And obviously it's very easy to kind of fall into that trap. And something that I come back to a little bit because and my wife would agree with this that it can be a little bit of an extremist sometimes, and really go hard when I want to go hard. And um so when I get on these little tangents of producing, I'm like, I can't consume anything. Like I can't watch a movie. I can't, watch like a 15-minute YouTube video or whatever, right? Like, and I kind of go to the extreme there. And I think getting back to this balance, right? Without consumption, there is no production either, right? So there is a healthy level to consume as well, right? But that production piece can't be understated, right? Because a lot of us are stuck in this consumption side of things. And
There's
it's
the
not like you
balance
have to,
again, Leah. That's the balance,
yeah,
and it's a feedback loop, right? Like they say there's
yeah.
nothing new under the sun, right? Like, and I get inspired all day. Like I seek to inspire, and then I get inspired. I'm a huge fan of cinema and film. I worked in the film industry and in production and things, and I enjoy consuming art, right? And I think we're in a time right now when we're in an important time to start realizing that one, because of the nature of the internet and the centralization and the power of the algorithm and the technocrats' ability to control us through that black mirror we call a smartphone. um, I think we're a lot of humanity is falling into these traps of categorization and specialization and really defining themselves in a very specific way. And in that way, we're also seeing a complete, in an ironic twist and a paradox, which is so weird, is we're seeing a generalization of culture and art to where everything has become bland and corporatized and really nothing dynamic and vibrant and unique in art. And so, and then you have that just mass consumerism, right? So, yeah, we're at like a really weird time where we have this immersion of technology in our lives to where we can access anything like we've never been able to, and yet people feel more lost than ever. You know,
Hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
it's a wild time for me because I work in technology, and specifically like decentralized technology, and I appreciate technology. I feel like it's just another expression of our art, of our consciousness.
Hmm.
But it needs to once again be grounded and balanced. And really, I
Hmm.
think decentralization is a massive way that we can do that because nature is inherently decentralized, reality is inherently decentralized because the creator has put forth consciousness to find itself and to because we have free will to seek wherever we want to seek. And unfortunately, a lot of people have given up their free will
Hmm.
and instead allow the algorithm to, to guide them right in their likes and then and what they see as truth and reality. So just having that once again that awareness of that and the ability to, hey, I'm going to dip in, I'm going to go to Instagram and I'm going to scroll a bit and see what the algorithm delivers to me, because I got to be honest, sometimes I get great stuff. Like I get really funny memes and things that are like, wow, that algorithm is pretty dang smart, man. Like I'm digging this, right? And then but then to have that awareness to go, okay, time to turn it off, time
Yeah.
to take a break, to have that discipline too, right? And that ability, and that comes back to the health element. Like we need to have discipline because we can easily get lost in doom scrolling all day or hope scrolling, whatever you're in, whatever the algorithm's serving you,
Yeah.
um, and then getting away from once again that journey we're on, that mission, right? Distractions pull us away from our mission. So there's a lot of things that I talk about that are practical, that are daily habits that we can engage in to help us. Like for me, I do a journaling practice every morning where I go through gratitude, I go through my goals for the day, I deal with task management, I deal with affirmations to help guide my subconscious. These are like very standard things that a lot of self-help gurus talk about and stuff, but these are still practical tools and applications that we can use to help us maintain our journey. Sorry about the dog. I don't know if you can hear her.
Can't even
She's
hear
going
him.
nuts.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I mean, again, awesome. The centralization and decentralization piece is a big one. What I maybe for the listener, because I don't think we've talked about it specifically, and I mean it ties really well into our conversation, but what is decentralization? What does that involve? How do we start to do that? How can I do that in my life?
Yeah. I mean, once again, nature is inherently decentralized. So when we embrace nature, we have a guide already. So we can see that with like how we plant stuff, how we engage with agriculture on our own land, right? Like, so just like how a seed works or how a garden works. Is a great guide. And then how our body works. Our body is inherently decentralized. So, all when you get into like deep into the terrain knowledge and work and understanding sort of how biology works and its relationship to physicality, well, we have a decentralized universe inside us that is being guided by its own ecosystem of natural law, right? And so we have these little protids, microzymas, if you will, like that are the seeds of life. And maybe your audience would actually know what this is without me having to explain all this because this is the Beyond Terrain podcast. And these, in my mind, are actually evolving to become one of us. There is a progression and evolution of consciousness within the overall design of this universe. And that is inherently decentralized. It is running on general laws. And so these laws are God's law, they are creation's law. And we don't need a centralized force of officialdom, a specific singular entity to prescribe these laws. They are inherent and built into the substructure of reality. And so when we can come to better know these laws and how these laws dictate reality, we can apply those into setting up systems, whether those be digital, synthetic, or just within our community, are the way that we interact with ourselves, the way we interact with our fellow neighbors, etc. So decentralization is inherently truth. It is just how reality works. And it's conducive and it functions because there are laws. There are laws in play that are immutable, indelible. We cannot change them. Um, well, maybe we can, and that's a whole other discussion, and that has to do with the progression of consciousness. But in terms of this realm that we're in here, this physical plane that we're on, there are indelible natural laws, universal laws that set the scope and the boundaries of how everything works, and that allows for decentralization. So, and a more like pragmatic answer here, how can we engage in decentralization? Well, first and foremost, you can just be aware that this is a solution, and you can engage with it. For instance, like I'm a co-founder in this project called Cordal, and Cordal is trying to engage in decentralization in a very radical way, going back to the first sort of elements and principles of the internet itself, in that we as an individual node, using our own internet, or excuse me, our own network, our own computer, can take part in like a grander and in a project that is connecting us all individually to run consensus on a system that is based on time, which is really decentralized because time is one of those laws that we all have to play by that we can't control. Okay, so in Quartal, spelled Qortal, is a way for us to, as content creators, as consumers, as folks trying to create communities, can download and run and really engage in a decentralized way that is indelible, censorship proof, unstoppable, all that good stuff. unlike the current web 2.0, 3.0, even that is really a silo that was created and controlled by a few mega corporations. So that's one way like that I've really embraced decentralization. And then another way, once again, is like in my garden, like growing my own food, right? And knowing how to propagate your own seeds, knowing how to forage. In fact, I just got this awesome book over the weekend, The Forager's Almanac. I'm really getting back into wildcrafting and foraging because, once again, nature is inherently decentralized. It's inherently abundant. It's all around us. We have a whole salad bar outside that we don't even know because we don't have the knowledge to know what to eat, right? Because we've lost that connection with that innate wisdom that we used to have for thousands of years. And so just teaching ourselves, getting back to these first principles of reality, really allows us to be more free and sovereign.
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to that definition at the start there, right? It's all tied in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. That's really cool.
It's all a big loop.
Yeah, just looking and knowing what's in your environment is something that's totally lost. Like being able to identify trees and different medicines, stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of absurd when you think about it. It's like it is the most abundant thing around, and we're able to identify logos like every single fast food chain around. We all know them, or like sports teams and stuff like that. We know all of them. You can name them all off, and then but when it comes to plants, you look at a plant and you're like, I don't know what that is, and I
Yeah.
don't have no clue what it does. But man, I mean, even what one plant can do, there's not just one, it's not allopathic, right? It's not like this plant or this herb does this or fixes this, right? Because the funny thing, like when I study a lot of like indigenous medicine and stuff like that, you study the Mi'kmaq, our people here versus you know up in Quebec, the Atikamekw, and they have the same plant, but they use it for completely different things, and both work. Both have this amazing amount of power that's beyond just this allopathic model, right? So it's kind of like transcending this whole modern idea of like one thing, one, whatever. That's kind of like the real allopathic way, but then you just got to go beyond that. And learning about this stuff is contributing to this decentralization, contributing to this sovereignty and everything like that too.
Yeah, I love that was a great point. That we have no problem instantly recognizing a brand, a logo, signage, all of that, because that's inherently been built up into us through modern society, right? Because that's what we need to survive now is like how to navigate the roads and know what the signs mean. But back in the day, to survive, you needed to know how to navigate the wilds and know what's going to kill you, what's poisonous, and what's not when you're foraging or whatnot. And so it's what serves us at this time, in terms of just base needs, right, of survival. But when we can go beyond that, and when we can truly, out of passion to have knowledge, right, and going back to that wisdom thing, then that's sovereignty. Like that
Hmm.
is getting out of that loop of mankind just being subservient to a system of control, to a means to an end, right? Like it's beyond that. And so, yeah, having that wonderment, that childlike wonderment to want to know. I'm always trying to embrace that more and more and trying to find what I don't know. Like, hey, I really need to work on this on myself. Like, why don't I know literally the things that are growing in my yard? Like that's wild, right? Like, how disconnected are we? So now I know, like when I see plantain coming up, that's nature's band-aid. And like,
Yeah.
and I know that these aren't weeds, these are symptoms, right?
Hmm.
In the same way our body works, my garden works that same way. And like dandelions aren't just like pretty flowers that pop up, but they're an incredible medicine and food and all that. And, and same with daisies and like all these
Hmm.
things that we take for granted. And I think it's just once again engaging with nature to learn about ourselves. And yeah, there's a lot you said there that is really It's really wild, the way where how far we've gotten away from the simple things that are so powerful. And then in terms of the sort of indigenous use of herbology and stuff, what they really understand versus the allopaths and chemistry, which once again is just quantitating things according to chemical reactions, which is so kind of barbaric in the end compared to understanding the grander qualitative aspects around the energetics of things, and it's really like an energy medicine, right? And it's the archetype of the plant. It's what the alchemists understood. It's
Hmm.
so much beyond the chemical constituents and this sort of need for modern man to break down and understand the pieces versus understanding the holistic whole of what the natural design is, right? Versus this need, this compulsion to break everything down, to be God, right? To understand the smallest infinitesimal points of being so that then we can somehow put it back together so we know how it works, when it's so much simpler, it's so much easier. And the alchemists understood that. And what it is, it's the direct relationship between us and the spirit of nature and the innate intelligence of nature, and how we can sort of come to understand that without the need to break everything down into the tiny pieces and then put it back together. And so, yeah, like modern science, like especially like modern medicine, this idea that we can like take cadavers and like dead things and then pull pieces out of it to understand life, right? Like literally, Mary Shelley exposed that in the famous book Frankenstein and how crazy that is, right? And that was like 200 years ago she wrote that, and we're still falling into that Promethean trap that somehow we can steal technology from God and do it ourselves. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that false paradigm and that logical fallacy. I'm thinking of the books, the Ringing Cedar books, the Anastasia books. That's like one of the biggest lessons out of those, if
Oh
you're
yeah.
familiar with those books. Which is she's this Russian mystic who is like all these books have been written, and one of the big lessons there is one of the great sins of man is this belief that we need to tear apart nature to understand it instead of just understanding it inherently, which is what
Hmm.
we were given that gift. We've been given that gift to inherently know nature without needing to rip it apart. And that shows the disconnect that modern man has had over the last 400 years with that scientific revolution, and the age of reason and all this nonsense, which really was just for me more control systems, centralized control systems to dominate our nature through the cloud, the veil of this scientism disconnect with who we truly
Hmm.
are. And I believe we're in a new renaissance right now that's really was initiated in 2020. I mean, it's been going on for decades in the underground, but I really believe it's been initiated in 2020, and a huge part of that is terrain and the explosion in that knowledge and explosion into back into alchemy and like all these cool topics we talk about in AlphaCast related to how we can better build things and this implosion versus explosion technology and truly what is quote unquote free energy and all these things related to the spirit sciences, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, man, it's wild times right now.
it is. It is. Yeah, the Alpha Vedic reading list, if you're ever looking for some books there, I found a lot of gems in there. So, um, I took in my undergrad at university, I took a course. It was History of Medicine, Birth of the Body. And honestly, one of the best courses that I took. Obviously, the professor made it, and it was more of a representation of him than the institution, which I appreciated a lot. And we talked about Hippocrates. Obviously, was a huge central discussion. So we were talking about how back in his day they would not dissect dead bodies. They would not cut them open. They didn't know anything about anatomy. They didn't know anything about that because there was this philosophical question which sort of shaped their spiritual beliefs in a way as well, or maybe vice versa. But it was, does a dead body act the same way as a live body? Does a dead body, look the same way as a live body, right? And he's asking these questions, and I put my hand up and I was like, have we actually answered these questions, 2,500 years later? And I stumped him so hard, I think he rethunk all of modern medicine there, then and there, right on the spot. But the conclusion that we kind of came to, because we had a pretty extensive discussion about it, was that like we haven't answered this. It actually makes a whole lot more sense to assume that a dead body doesn't act or look like a live body than anything, right? Like that's kind of the more reasonable thing to assume. And that's the thing; it is an assumption, right? It both would be an
Massive
assumption, which
assumption. Massive
you know,
assumption.
which like assumptions, and if you want to really get into that, I mean, that's kind of a too big of a topic, but
Well, I would
all
say
of
like all of modern science and medicine is based on like 5, 6 massive assumptions that are
yeah, I completely
logical
agree.
fallacies, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
The assumption of
yeah, no.
Darwinian evolution, the assumption of gravity, the assumption of, well, we could get into globe, flat, all that stuff. But yeah, the assumption of a lot of these things that came out of, once again, like the 1600s, the age of reason, that were never actually logically solved or proven. And it goes back to even Aristotle and in the empiricists and a lot of this stuff that was just based on materiality, and it's once again not in balance. It's not in balance. And yeah, I do believe, like, with seeing like the explosion in a lot of physicists and stuff that are going back towards idealism and relating to mind centered reality and things. I'm thinking of like Kastrup. Bernardo Kastrup is really big in this, right? And I think that's a great trend because it's getting us back out of that pure materiality that definitely dominated the 20th century. And at least people are starting to ask again. And for me, like one of the goat for me of philosophy is Plato still, or you could say Socrates, because of this deep understanding that all physicality and form comes first from the mind, right? This other place, and that would be the same for spirit inhabiting body. And so, like, to say that a cadaver has the same properties as a living, breathing, vital being, once again goes back to that book Frankenstein I mentioned. Like, it's insanity. It's insane, and it's this Promethean idea that we can steal God's powers through technology. And I think the transhumanism agenda is that sort of apex of that, and it's great to see so many people calling it out now. Um, there truly is a great awakening around all this, and I think we have now we have a time in front of us where we're going to be able to, through this balance, being able to appreciate and use technology the right way to get back into balance and with nature. And so, for one example, um, here's one example of that. Like, I'm talking about the Forager's Almanac, and like that takes a lot of years to study this stuff, to know like what mushrooms to pick and not poison yourself. Well, I have some pretty amazing apps on my phone that would allow me to identify plants in real time in an amazing way using AI and using these technologies to for the betterment of my foraging skills, right? So in that way, we're embracing technology and we're using it to benefit us without giving ourselves away to it. And so, yeah, I think, like, if we don't want to be Luddites and totally deny technology, but we want to respect it and we want to use it in the right way. And I think that's going to be true too for like the terrain sciences, like getting back to finding these great um, microscopes and these optical microscopes that we had lost. You have of course, the Royal Rife one and the lore of that, and Gaston Nasson's, and these microscopes that were able to see farther. And I think that's cool. That's cool, but more importantly, I think that what's going to evolve out of this is our pure spiritual technology and skills, where we won't need those tools anymore because we'll inherently be able to see those. Like, and this may sound a little woo woo to people, but having that ability to go into your own anatomy and look for yourself through your consciousness, right? Like, my father, who is he was getting his master's in psychology at University of Montana. He had a professor, actually was at an associate that worked with a professor at UCLA, who was teaching his students how to go out of body and meet him in the evening and fly around LA in out of body experiences. And he was also doing incredible things where he was able to go into hospitals where people had severe traumatic injuries, for instance, like tendons being ripped off, bones and stuff, and to extend his consciousness into the anatomy and mend them back together. And like, that sounds wild, but when you truly understand the science that we're talking about here, and the relationship between the physical and the spiritual and the soul, once again, all this stuff can be explained. So that's where we're going. That's why Telepathy Tapes podcast has exploded in popularity. That's why people are starting to understand that the truest, greatest technology is us. And when we come back to the awareness and understanding of this, then we can start exploring this more and start using it again like we used to use, and how those indigenous healers used, because they understood that relationship to the plant, like the alchemists understood it's directly relating to our own consciousness and our own interface there between those other realms that we can't quantify currently with our current technology.
Yeah, well, I think you make a lot of great points there, and I think something I want to highlight is just that to kind of add to what you're saying is that all technology is also mimicking nature. It's mimicking like AI, right? It's all neural networks. That's what they call it, neural networks. Now, are we going to sit here and say that the way we understand neurons are completely correct? I think, us and Harold Hillman would disagree with that, but it's but the concepts, right? We're trying to mimic what the logic of neural networks, I guess, in a way. And maybe AI has more knowledge in their database than a human being does, right? But it truly shows that it's a conglomerate of the consensus in a way, right? And of all that you can fit into a database. But the point is that it mimics,
It's really fast data processing and recollection of what's already been
yeah,
created. Can't create anything new. And that's
100%.
the secret here, is the secret of creation.
Yeah.
The secret of creation is what makes life life
Mhm.
and nature nature. And I don't ever see AI being conscious, because AI is just, as you said, it's a neural network of databases connected through a very fast, rapid processing power. And it can be like a simulacrum of consciousness, but it will always be based upon the consensus of what mankind has created. And this is a really deep conversation. It can go into a lot of metaphysics and a lot of interesting tangents, but I don't fear AI. What I fear is our own disconnection from ourselves. And when we have that disconnection from our own internal power, then we give it away to governments and big centralized corporations and all these things that will wield AI as a weapon against us.
Yeah, well put. I couldn't agree more. Um, don't fear AI. We talked about that a lot. We talked about that with Mark over too, and
Oh,
talked all about AI
I
because
love Mark. He's a good friend of mine.
he's great mind, man. Like, but yeah, we talked about that, and like that creation piece, that creativity piece, that's what science in quotations, like modern, science and academia like can't and will never be able to do. They will never be able to create life. They'll try, and they'll even try to convince you that they have, but they cannot. Like, even like they want to grow an embryo outside of the body, they still need to hijack the fundamentals. They still need to hijack the egg and the sperm. Like, it's no. they can't do this stuff. They cannot make a cell, and obviously cells, as we
And
know,
they
we
don't
can
even know
probably
what
talk about.
they don't even know what consciousness is. They can't define it.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
the materialist paradigm is shattering before us, and I believe we're kind of going right now through a stage of romanticism again. So, which is fun. So it's sort of
It's fun.
yeah, what we saw when the age of reason was kind of coming to a decline after the French Revolution, and you had like a Napoleon come into power. You had this explosion of romanticism as we embraced our innate ability to, be one with nature and champion ourselves, and like that's great. I think that's really important for us to experience that and to have that as a culture and community. But I believe we're moving into we're transcending that into, and I'm talking with romanticism in terms of like the truther community and stuff, like not necessarily mainstream conventional society. I believe that unfortunately is going more and more nihilistic and cynical and lost. But within the like underground, if you will, um, this deeper awareness out of that into like a postmodern reality of like we can embrace it all. We can like delve into the darkness. We can use AI. We can really uh, look at it all without fear because we have this innate knowledge and knowing of who we truly are that we haven't had in a very long time. And that is really, really exciting to me. And I think that's why these conversations matter. And I hope that it can inspire others to seek within more and more without fear. And that doesn't necessarily mean going on a mushroom trip or taking ayahuasca. It could literally be something as simply finding a way to volunteer in your community to help, like the homeless or something. I took on volunteering firefighting for 8 years. It was something I completely feared and was against all of my sort of biological instincts coming out of LA as a Hollywood DJ producer with no really like tie into health, like into that sort of like emergency care and like jump, fire fighting and stuff. But I, for some reason, universe asked me to do this to challenge myself. And that was a massive awakening in terms of just finding other parts of myself that on the spiritual path. And then two, it reminded me on the importance of in this world, especially at this time when we can get so comfortable, especially in the West, places like Canada, the United States, is to seek discomfort, to seek challenges, to seek ways that we can, um, uh, you know, find the true inner knowingness of ourselves through those challenges. And whether that be going on a backpacking trip, going into an ice plunge, taking on a new challenging hobby, like I said, volunteering at a soup kitchen, doing those sort of acts is, I think, really, really important for us as a community to grow and to learn and to be better people.
Wow. Amazing. I think that's probably a great time to kind of wrap things up here, Mike. That was a great way to end things off. I will give you a moment just if you do want to add any final thoughts, anything that you want to add to the episode or anything like that. That'd be the time.
Well, no, man, I just really appreciate being on here. I mean, I can talk about this stuff all day. Um,
Me too.
I like talking about it because I think it's important that once again we are here to inspire each other. And obviously, I don't want to talk about it all day because I got stuff to do. But inspiring each other is so important, and we really need each other more than ever. So find your community, whether that be online or in person, ideally both. Um, I'm really focused on that. So I've got the online private community at alphabetic.com you can join. It's really fantastic, like deep terrain talk and talks about foraging and homesteading and law and processes around law and just how to really help each other out in our path towards sovereignty. Really awesome. And then we have the Music and Sky community as well. That's online. And also we do events. If you feel called to come to an event where you can really engage with others on this path, It's phenomenal. Now we're in a new phase where we're finding land and we're creating the Music and Sky Village now. So that's sort of the new thing we're doing. And so the events have been put on pause. So that's really exciting, though. You go to musicandsky.com to find out more about that. And then also, like, I'll be at a bunch of events this year. I'm going to Anarchapulco in a couple of weeks. So I'll be out in Mexico for that, doing a workshop and hosting one day on main stage and DJing the parties there. And then I'll be out in North Carolina at an event, a Barbara O'Neill event in March. I'll be at Confluence, which I think Mark Gober is going to be back there. Alex Zek and Eileen McCusick put this on a farm in Texas. Really, really awesome. So that's in May. And then I'm going out to Australia in August for the Living Free Festival. And that's really fun because that's uh, people that are all these people are super grounded in terrain and law and stuff. And these are all phenomenal events to go to. So you can find out more about me if you just go to mikewinter.com. And all my I'm working on getting my calendar of events and stuff on there. And yeah, I'd love to see you in person. I love giving hugs. And really, it's about meeting in person, man. Like, there's nothing better, dude, than going to these events and engaging with in the field of other people who are on the path, especially like what we're doing. But if you can't do that, yeah, find an online community. Community is where it's at. And I love you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. No, we really, really do appreciate your time and all the wisdom that you had to share and everything that you've done and will continue to do, Mike. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. And I want to thank you all for listening. You should all know that this is not medical advice. This is for your informational purposes only, but also remember that we're all responsible, sovereign beings capable of thinking, criticizing, and understanding absolutely anything. We and the greater forces are together self-healers, self-governable, self-teachers, so much more. Please reach out if you have any questions, criticisms, comments, concerns. You know where to find me. Instagram's a great way to message me. I get to the comments, email me, whatever. You can find a way to contact me if you're interested. I love hearing your thoughts on the episodes, and yeah, I really love just chatting with you guys. If you did like this episode or any of our episodes, make sure you leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, review, rating. All that goes a long way in helping us grow and get the word out. Just remember, guys, there are two types of people in the world: those believe they can, those believe they can't, and they are both correct. Thanks for listening, and take care.